Good afternoon. My name is Cozy Stone, and welcome back to Cozy Up and Pay Attention, the Parent Edition. And I said every Tuesday, if you're looking at me, it's 2 o'clock straight up Pacific Standard Time, and I am getting ready to give you another wonderful parent who is doing a spectacular job in raising. I think she's got one raised, raising some children. And if you do me a favor, take a deep breath, exhale, come back. We'll be right back.
Cozy Stone is a multi-talented comedian extraordinaire who has a real lust for life. She also combines humor and motivation, where she is known as a humorvational speaker. Her youthful ways and positive light make her a beacon for those of all ages. Cozy has lived a remarkable life that has paved the way for so many. She had the longest running open mic venue of 11 years at Tommy Rockers in Vegas, called Cozy's Comedy Corner, through which she introduced many up-and-coming comedians. Before going into comedy, she was one of the first female personal trainers and one of the top fitness trainers in the world. She has trained many greats such as Billie Jean King, Roberta Flack, Andrew Young, Ed Bradley, CCH Pounder, Al Pacino, and Earl Monroe. As a former competitive bodybuilder, she also owned a bodybuilding gym for women over 40 in Los Angeles for several years. She has worked in top positions for HBO, Playboy, and Tony Robbins. She also enjoys volunteer work, dedicating time to the New York Foundling Hospital and babies with AIDS. Cozy Stone has a message that shouldn't be missed.
I'm back. Please welcome my guest today, Heather Phillips. Good afternoon.
Hi.
How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Are you less nervous?
Nope.
All right. So as I give my little spiel, I need you to take a deep breath and exhale. And what I like to tell the audience every week is this show's concept is to bring on parents who, as I like to say, put the pedal to the metal, or have a clue, and are doing everything it takes to make their kids as responsible adults for society as they can. We know, of course, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. There is no book that can tell you how to have a perfect child. And more importantly, I hope everyone is listening. This show is not about parent shaming. We say this is a positive note. If you're doing it right, or you see something on this show that can help you along the way, something you never thought about, every week I learn something different that adds to parents just maybe implementing something in their style that may give them different results. So again, my lady today is Heather Phillips. And Heather, what we like to do initially is give the audience a background where your parents came from, and then we come forward to where you are today. So my first question is, where were your parents born and raised?
So my dad was born in California and raised in Washington, California, and Oregon as a military child. And my mom was raised and born in Southern Oregon. And so they ended up as adults living 70 miles away from each other in two different towns, but they actually met in Alaska. So yeah.
Because he was in the service?
Because he was a forestry firefighter, but he was actually friends with my mom's sister and some people that they had gone to college with. And so when my mom went up to Alaska, he was part of the group that she met when she went up there, when we went up there when I was 2. And so they met up in Alaska, but they were from 70 miles apart.
Okay. So how old, because you just made a statement there, how old was your mom? Are you your mom's firstborn?
I am the oldest, and she was 24 when I was born.
Oh, okay. All right. That's grown, if you will. And
Yes.
how old was your dad?
Well, he is 1 year and 1 day younger than my mom, so he would have been 24-ish.
Oh, your mom's a dirty old lady. Remember to have her watch the show.
Out in the cradle.
And where did you meet your husband for your children?
In Washington State. So I was raised in Alaska, and I lived
Right.
there up until I was the end of my junior year. We moved to Washington near Seattle, Tacoma area when I was a senior in high school. So I actually met the father of my two youngest ones in high school and my oldest one right after high school.
Okay. And how old were you when you had your first child?
I had just turned 19 when she was born.
Okay.
So I was young. But I was
Okay.
graduated and I was out of high school and I was working.
Okay. That's important. Thank you for sharing that. And so the next question is when when you met this gentleman, was there anything about was the pregnancy planned or unplanned?
Two were unplanned and one was planned.
Let's go with
So
the
my
first one.
oldest two were not planned.
Okay.
The youngest was planned after he had come back from a tour in Iraq during Iraqi freedom.
Okay.
So,
So let's stick with the first two for now.
okay.
So you met him, you obviously had unprotected sex with him. So what? Once you found out you were pregnant, what was it about him that you thought would add, let's call it DNA? Last week I said to myself, Cozy, call it what it is. What part of his DNA did you assess being a contribution to to giving birth to his children?
Well, I mean, at that point, I was already pregnant with him, and for my oldest one, that was a relationship that did not go beyond finding out that I was pregnant. So he chose not to be a part of her life until she was older. So that was neither here nor there. The second one, we were actually talking about getting married. We, like I said, we had met in high school. We had dated in high school, and we were talking about getting married when we found out we were pregnant. So, he hit all those check boxes that you have when you're young and idealistic, and you think that the world is going to be a certain way, and the world has obviously evolved and changed in the last 20 years. Into a new reality, a new gaming system. And so that gaming system at the time seemed like that was the right gaming system for me. And at the time it was, and for 11 years we were married and it worked out.
How long did you know him prior to getting pregnant? When you were 19, how long did you know him?
I had known him since I was just 16, 3 years.
Okay.
I met him in high school. So
All
I
right.
met him as soon as we moved there, and I met him he was one of the first people I met at the school when I transferred to my second high school in my senior year.
So there was a relationship. It wasn't a 2 months,
Yes.
3 months, 4 months. All right. All right. So you knew something about him. You knew something
Yep.
about his family. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We already said the plan. So I like to ask, when you're given the news or took the test, whichever one you did, the pregnancy test, and you knew you're pregnant, you're 19 years old, you're still living at home, correct?
No, and at the time with my oldest daughter, I was not living at home at that time.
Okay. So the question is whether you're home or not. Did you feel fear or fantasy that you're going to give birth to another human being? What was your initial feelings?
My initial feelings were hell no, and now I can't eat cheese anymore because I kept getting sick every time I eat cheese. So I was like, this is not going to work for me because I like cheese. No, there was fear. My mom probably could tell you exactly when I told her and how I told her and how I left the house right after I told her, because I was like, not what I was planning for my life. I had some ideas and plans of what I was going to do, and trying to figure out how to do that. And, being a single parent, luckily I had family support, but yeah, it was not a fantasy at all. There was definitely a lot of fear there.
All right, getting ahead of my questions. That's what you know what they are. So, and the reason I'm asking all these questions is for mostly young girls. I'm going to just start saying how I feel. That how long have you known the person? Did you know anything about him? The fear, because I believe some young girls think, oh, I'm gonna have a baby, and that's not the reality. So that's why I want you all to come on, each of you individually, and just tell what your feelings and what your experience was like. Now, you knew him, 16, 19, you get pregnant. So what? what were some of the differences? I like to talk about differences of how you both wanted to raise your child.
Um, so with my oldest daughter's dad, that was a little more left to me just because I was the full-time parent there. With my younger two, with my husband, who I met in high school, and so he was the father of my second and my third one. We, for the most part, when they were younger, we were pretty on track for how we raised them. It was when they got older that we deviated from how we were raising them. And what the expectations were. And that's where the differences and I think the hardships in our marriage came in were in how to raise children. I was more involved. I was involved in their school. I was involved with, their after school. I was involved with a lot of that. And I was still running a company and building a company. And he just wanted to work and not have to be a parent or discipline or be involved. He just wanted them to pretty much be and not be.
Right. Wow. So even though you had a husband and a man in your home, as usual, everything fell on you. So
Yes.
The discipline, the chores, the what have you, it didn't matter how he was raised. He didn't bring him into the relationship. Correct? Okay.
Pretty much.
This is going to be I'll ask it anything. So the question is what did you consider before? Yeah, it pertains. You're pregnant. You're now going to have this wonderful human being. What were 3 things you considered before the baby was born?
How am I going to do this? Am I going to be okay doing this? And am I the right person to do this?
Wow. All right. The last question that I like to ask that gives us more background about you, your parents, where you came from. In each one of our lives, I'm going to call you another name, Heather. We hear our parents in the back of our head, where our kids will do something and we'll hear our parents' words coming out of our mouth. What are 1 or 2 of the things that you say out of your mouth that you can remember your parents saying to you?
Actually, it's more my grandma. My grandma was always the one that had the quips.
Yeah.
My mom was pretty easygoing, and my dad was gone a lot of our like summertime and stuff. So my grandma and my grandpa would come up, and my grandma used to always say, if you think that you can do it, then you better be able to pick a switch that can take care of the problems you just caused. Because, we would get into trouble and, my cousin and I would always try and blame each other. So my grandma's solution was that, we had to go find a switch, because while you're out there, you're thinking, you're trying to figure out, do I get a big switch or a small switch? Because now that's the punishment. She didn't actually punish us with the switch. The punishment was finding that switch. And if she didn't think that she put enough thought into it or enough, fear into it, for mouthing off or whatever we had done, or disappearing in the woods of Alaska, which was not safe always, she would go out and find another switch. And then now you were more scared because you knew she was going to come back and she was going to hold that switch and tell you what you did wrong and why it was wrong. And she never actually did anything with that switch. It's that fear of it. So whenever I would hear my kids, I would be like, do you need a switch? And they're like, going to be like, what are you talking about? What's a switch? And now that there's a thing called a switch, my kids are like, oh, is this what you were talking about? Like, were you? No, that's not what I was talking about.
All right. So they know the meaning of the switch, and you have used that while raising them. All right. Well, let's get into your questions. The first question that you asked me to ask you, did you know your child's or children's friends?
I did. Our house, up until, even today, was always the house that all the kids ended up at. We were the house that all the kids came over and stayed the night at. They'd come for dinner. They'd leave a play and everybody would want to come hang out with us. I actually still talk to and am friends with some of my kids as friends. The oldest is turning 24, and I still get messages from her friends, saying, "Oh, hey, look at this picture that popped up in my memories from X many years ago." We still have a lot of those memories, and I know them. I still know them. I still know their families, their mamas, their daddies, their grandmas, grandpas. I mean, we knew their families.
So tell the audience the significance of knowing your children's friends.
I never had to worry about where my kids were going to go or who they were going to be with, because I knew the kids that they were hanging out with. And if a kid was not in a spot where they were maybe making good decisions, I knew my kids were going to help lead them to good and right decisions, because they were going to bring those kids to our home. They were going to have them hang out with us. They were going to have them be involved with us. And they were going to tell me, like, hey, this child has a hard time at home, or they're feeling this way. So that way I knew whether it was something that needed to be, taken one way, or if it was just an educational, like, hey, maybe talk to your friend this way. So I was able to advocate for and with my kids easier and better, because I knew their kids, and I knew the kids that they weren't quite at where my kids were at, whether it was emotional or physical being comfortable, and my kids wouldn't bring those kids around because they didn't feel that was a healthy person to be around for them. So that was a really good thing to see, the choices that they were making in their friends. And to this day, I don't worry about my kids and their friends, because I know that they're building lifelong, real, lasting relationships with people, not just somebody who they're going to treat them poorly or act like a doormat too.
And yet you bring me those kind of people. Moving forward.
I bring you all the people that need you and that you need.
I love that. It's like I'm saying to myself, but she brings them to me. I don't want them in my life. All right, next question.
But you need each other. That's why I bring them.
No. That's off the camera. Did you attend parent-teacher meetings for all of your children?
I did.
And again, tell us what the significance was of attending parent-teacher meetings.
So I not only attended the parent-teacher meetings, but I also, where I could, obviously as a single parent working and involved in going to college myself during their upbringing, I also would volunteer in the classroom where I could, whether it was for trips, whether it was for just helping other kids in the class read, whatever was needed. And it was good because I was able to get a relationship with their teachers too. And that way, when there was ever anything, if the kids were having a hard week due to something maybe from transferring between houses or the holidays, I was able to have open communication and dialogue with their teachers. And their teachers knew if something was seeming a little different, that they could reach out to me because I had those relationships. I could probably tell you almost every teacher that my children had, and I actually still communicate with some of them to this day. And when one of them passed away, it was a very big emotional hit for our family as a whole, because we all knew her, loved her, and had spent many years with her throughout all three of them going through the elementary school program.
He's such a sweetheart. Okay. Your next question is, what did you do, or probably still are, to encourage success? And with that, some of my examples are either chores, social skills, educational expectations. The question again, what did you do to encourage success for your children?
They had chores, and those were chores. They were not paid for those chores. Some of those chores were their own chores. They had to do their own laundry, wash, dry, and put away. They had to help. The one time a month, they had to come up with a dinner plan for the family. They had to help me shop for it. They had to cook it. Obviously, they had help where they needed it. And they started that at a very young age. They were responsible for helping with dishes. There was things that they had to do collectively for themselves, but also some stuff that they had to do for the family, because it takes a family to build a home. And if you're only having one person do it, that's called a bed and breakfast or a hotel. And I don't look at it in a maid's outfit. So everybody had to help pull their weight. But they also had choices. If they chose not to eat something that I was making, they could make themselves something else with a limited menu, because then they had the right to say, hey, I don't like this, and there's a lot of stuff that maybe they don't like, but they would eat just because somebody had offered it to them. It was a respect thing. So they also, grades were important, but they weren't the utmost importance. I wanted my kids to do their best. I was not an A student in school. I was bored in school, and so my grades reflected that. So as long as my kids were trying, even if they didn't get a good grade, I was encouraged. I told them, I was like, hey, if you're doing what you can and you've done what you can, then I'm proud of you. But you gotta try. And so they all had their moments. They had some really good grades, and they had some moments where I wasn't sure if either one of us was going to live when they had to get that homework assignment. And let me tell you, the kids that do the science fair projects on how horribly science fair projects affect families, I love those children, because I'll tell you, those were like the book reports and the dioramas and the science fair projects were the bane of my existence, because there was always something there. And I was like, how do I beg or plead this child to finish this? So I was like, okay, you don't have to do this chore for a week. If you just finish this project, and I don't have to help you with it. No, chores there was some chores, nobody wanted to do. So we would rotate, we had a plan. If they wanted to swap chores, it had to be fair. Because, you don't always, have, something come up and you can't do your chore, but it still has to get done. So you have to work it out where it's fair for everybody. You can't take advantage. So that's the way we did it in our house.
That sounds like a great partnership. And as you said, you're the mom, you're not the maid. And the reason I ask, and thank you, is these are things they're going to have to do anyway. And if they don't do it when they leave your house, that's fine. You just need to do it while they're in your home. Take some of the load off of you as the mom doing it all. And that's what they got to see. The next question is things you taught your child, and the three things I put here, and you can pick one or two: respect, thankfulness, and honesty. You pick which one you want to talk about.
Let's start with respect. I instilled in them respect. They are going to call somebody, Miss Cozy. They're going to call somebody Mr. Jim or Mr. Walters or whatever they ask to be called, out of respect. They're going to probably eat some foods that, even though they may not like them, they're still going to be respectful and eat it, because one of the things that I wanted them to understand is that, not everything is done the way that we do them, whether it's cultural or whether it's, monetarily. So be respectful and grateful for the opportunities and the time that people are giving you, whether it's their time or their food or the opportunities. And so respect was one of those. Honesty was the other one. It's always hard to tell the truth, but it's like, tell the truth. It's, the punishment or the outcome is going to be, easier than if you lie, because the more you lie, the more you have to remember the lie, the more you have to pile onto that lie. And if I'm asking you, I probably already have the real answer. So just give me the truth, and then we'll work forward from there. It's much easier for both of us.
And did you find while raising them, they pretty much stuck to that program, and they still do?
Yeah, they all became really good at tattling on themselves. It was really awesome. And it was, to this day, they still will do something. They're like, all right, I lied. All right, here's the truth. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, I love
They'll
it.
Tattle on themselves as adults. That's great.
All right. That'll carry them far. Yeah. Your last question is, and you can take one at a time. What are you most proud? No, we can put it in one sentence. What are you most proud of your children? And if you want to separate the four and this, that, and the other, that's fine too.
So I got to tell you, each one of them has taken themselves, and I see in each one of them that they are tenacious. They are giving, and they are loving, and they are not always making stuff about themselves. They understand that in order to get, you have to give, and that givers get, and that getters don't get. They just give people headaches. And they've excelled in sports. They've excelled in being a parent. They've excelled in starting their own businesses and taking that crazy leap of moving out of mom and dad's home and and starting their own life and adulting and paying bills. And I'm very proud of them for that, because it's not easy. It's really easy sometimes to just stay at your parents' house and make excuses. And they have not done that. They've gone out and decided to wrangle the world. And, they call home when they need that extra little piece of, can I do this? And I said, yep, you can do this. You're doing it right now. And just calling home sometimes is just proof that you're doing it, because you were able to pick up the phone and call home. So, they're very amazing. They are all now 18 and older, and one's almost about to graduate. One's a mom, and one's an entrepreneur. So they're alive, well, and thriving, unlike my plants. So I am very proud of them.
Did you say unlike my plants?
I don't know. I had plants while the kids were growing up, and as soon as the kids started moving out, all the plants started dying. So apparently I can raise kids, but
can't
not
raise
plants.
Well, the plants were thriving off of the kids too. And I do want to say this. It's not often, well, whether it's often or not, when I met your 18-year-old, I was, and I called you next day to tell you, I already loved you, already respected you, but me meeting your 18-year-old gave me a whole newfound respect for you as a person, as a parent. He just won my heart. His mannerisms, his respect, his openness, again, his honesty. I'm not even going to talk about this hug, this wet, nasty hug he gave me, because he was playing soccer, people. So let me just preface it with saying that it was so delightful. It's not something I can remember from anyone else's child lately. And I'm sure in all the years I've been here, this had to have been somebody else's child that did it for me. But I was bowled over by meeting Logan, and I love his name, by the way, so that helped as well. So I thank you. We all thank you. But before I finish thanking you, I have my fun question. And the question that you chose was, no one's asked this one before. It fits you. If you could ask your pet 3 questions, what would they be?
So, as you know, and I'm sure most people know, I have 5 dogs that reside in my house, and no, not all of them are mine, but they live here, so they're all my responsibility. And there's times where I really would like to ask them, like, do you really need to bark at nothing? Because, do you really need to eat your food outside the bowl and all the way down the hallway? Do you need to do that? Because that's what that is. And do you really have to be so needy to get all of the hugs and loves? Can you share with your siblings? Because there's only 2 hands and I'm only 1 human. I'd have to ask them. I'd have to, because they're very needy for 5 dogs. Like I have 50.
All dogs are needy. Everybody who has a dog, no. Dogs, as opposed to cats, are needy. Cats aren't needy. Dogs are needy. And people don't want to admit to that. That is the truth. I've had them both. But it's okay, because let me tell you something. When we first started, remember, I heard your dog and I asked you, are they going to bark? So now let me be impressed again that they didn't. I had one guest on, and thank God it was the day we had technical difficulties, because her dog was going nutso in the background. And I don't remember why she didn't put him away, but by the time we did the other show, the dog wasn't in the background. We can't have dogs barking. I'm sorry. Audience can't hear it. But let me just say something, because, I'm a comedian and I think everything's funny. So prior to the show starting, people, I sat here in my home trying to get a light off of my shoulder. You can see it, can't you? So now, and I'm sure Dana's in the background, she must be dying. The sun obviously is moving over, and now I've got spots on my face. Last week it went straight down the middle of my face. I look like an Avatar character. So now I know I need to put the desktop on the other side. Dana and I are going to figure this out before this show is over. Was it as bad or as painful as you thought it was going to be?
No, it wasn't that. I just, these things are always a little stressful. So
being you it should never be stressful. Being the wonderful parent that you are and the human being that I've grown to love should never be stressful. I want to thank you for giving me of your time because I know how much you have on your plate. I don't sleep and I have less than anything on my plate, and hopefully you'll get a little bit of rest. Folks, again, Cozy Up and Pay Attention to Parent Edition wants to showcase and does showcase parents. You've heard it again today, how old she was, what she did with that situation, the life lessons that she was given, the life lessons that she provided to her children, the fact that you stuck with it, stuck to it, the discipline part of being a parent. I have one parent on here and I talk about him almost every week, and he's also a great friend. And I love it. And I can't get his out my head. When I told my kids no, I never changed my mind. When I told them yes, I never changed my mind. And I know that has to be hard, but at the end of the day, they're still going to love you. They'll get over it. And if they don't, you will. But it's what makes you the boss. It what makes you not the boss, the leader, the mom, the person that they can always go back to and trust that you did it for their benefit. And that's what children don't know. He's just being mean, or they don't want me to. No, it's something down the line. And according to what you're telling, and as I said, I've met two of them. I fell in love with both. Grace, we're not going to say Grace. I renamed her daughter, people, don't ask. She looks like a Grace to me, so I call her Grace.
She responds to it too. Somebody called her at work the other day and she responded. So
yeah. So I thank you. We have, we're 1 minute over. I hit that 30-minute mark. I love you.
I love you too.
I'm very grateful for your coming in my world, because who knows if I would have done this show had I not met you. There's so many things that you got the ball rolling back in my life when I met you that I didn't really give a lot of thought to. So I'm very grateful for your encouragement to me and everything you're doing in the community. Continue to stay good, to give love, to care about other people. I don't think there's a choice of you doing anything else. Happy Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you before Thursday. Folks,
I'm sure I'll talk to you, but thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
and I'm going to call you. I am going to call you after this, so put your phone on.
Okay.
We'll watch. Folks, thank you for watching Cozy Up and Pay Attention to Parent Edition. We are here, unless God knows something I don't, every Tuesday, Pacific Standard Time at 2:00. I am looking for more dads. If you're interested in coming on and telling us your wonderful story and your strife for getting kids to be the wonderful people we need them to be, I can be reached at cozyupandpayattention@gmail.com. People, we're just here to help. That's all we want to do. And I believe when we know better, we do better. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next week.